Welcome to the Poetry Flash reading series. I'm Joyce Jenkins, Poetry Flash editor and director, coming to you from Poetry Flash in Berkeley. Today we are very pleased to present a reading by Doran Robbins and Susan Suntree. This reading is co-sponsored by Moe's Books, Berkeley. You can purchase the books at this link, bookshop.org/lists, LISTS/poetry-flash-readings. Scroll down just a bit on that page and we'll see all the books featured in tonight's event. The link is in the chat box. You are muted on entry. Please do not unmute yourselves during the reading if you can possibly help it. This event is being recorded and will be posted on the Poetry Flash Facebook page and YouTube channel. After the reading, after the recording is stopped, we'll keep the Zoom on for a few minutes so those who are joining us live tonight can ask a question or say hello. Please visit poetryflash.org to see reviews and news about upcoming events in California. To join our email list, our email blast, to get news of future events, go to poetryflash.org and scroll to join our mailing list. Here's Richard Silberg, Poetry Flash Associate Editor, who will introduce today's poets.
Hi, poetry fans. Our first of two readers will be Susan Suntree. We'll be reading. She's going to be reading from her second book, which is this book, Dear Traveler. I hope you can see that. Which is a luminous trip, really. And she is a poet, an essayist, and a performer. And her concerns are the interactions of art, science, and spiritual philosophy, which is really, art enters into this book, probably not that I can remember, but science and spiritual philosophy are happening big time. It's a very luminous journey, not totally sunny, no pun intended, but because we're going to the verge of death, decay. There's a very interesting kind of sideways move in the middle of the journey, in which we talk about, I think she terms it the wildlife within us, the bacteria, the sympathetic organisms that are sending their own messages out into the universe, into our brains. We begin. Now, everything begins with the phrase, Dear Traveler. And when you look at it on the page, she's moving in short, kind of vacillating lines, little bursts of poetry. And she ends, I believe, the very last words, the sun is leaving, the stars are coming out, and we're confronted with love's beloved body. So let's fly off from there. Susan Suntree.
Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Joyce, for inviting me to give the inaugural reading of Dear Traveler here on Yay Poetry Flash. And I'm honored to be reading with Doren, who I've known for a long time and who is a superb poet. And thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. So the poems in Dear Traveler presented themselves to me over the past few years while I was traveling in Western Ireland, far northern Norway, Alaska, Canada, Western Mongolia, among other journeys. The words would just show up and I'd record them in my travel journals. Eventually, they stopped appearing. And that's when I realized I had possibly the draft of a collection. So many thanks to my writing group and poet friends and family who were all essential to the manuscript's completion. And I want to call out my friend, longtime friend, the late poet Steve Sanfield, whose haiku and hoops long ago piqued my interest in these forms. And of course, to the 17th century, Japanese poet Basho, whose book, Narrow Road to the Deep North, influenced my understanding of my own collection. So as Richard said, all the poems in this collection are directly addressed to a traveler. This book is dedicated to Robert Aiken Roshi, teacher, poet, friend, and Peggy Watson, sister, fellow traveler. Traveler, your glorious past, your glorious future. Where are your feet? At the trailhead, time opening its map. Traveler, you are the song of your own making without knowing the notes. Music rises without tongue, no strings, no reeds. The sound begins as a chorus. Desert winds circle brush and spare stalks of grass. How the sticks will sing is what the wind wants to know. How do you hear when even your ears are singing? Traveler, January dawn, one dove, ooh, 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 from the magnolia tree, silence. Last winter, 5 sang into the pattern. Wakeful in your bed, you sing, cuckooing crescendo, stop, silence. One dove calls to no other. Singular dove notes weave only with silvering light. Silence. White cat sleeping next to you, ears up, dreams pounce, flurry, wet entrails. Silence. Dove flies to the feeder, broad gray breast scattering seeds and grain. Traveler, I see your eyes lift from silence to the image of death crouched on your altar, arms hung loose, waiting, barefoot, blue coveralls, dark orange wings encircle your body. Sunset framed beside a photo of 3 sandhill cranes dancing in gray wetlands. And your dry, hard stick of a mind waiting for spring. Traveler, look down. 10 pebbles block the path. Take a side or ask directions. Traveler, the boundary of hell is the rest. In this next poem, I use the word lee, and it means the side sheltered from weather or view, as in like the lee of a stone. Traveler, obscure in the lee of the mind's broad compass. Your body breathes with all that is itself, stone and grass, the microbes who occupy your guts in vast colonies, aerobic, anaerobic, the breathing goes on, while the mind takes measurements, plows into prairies, claims victory, clutters the moon with plutonium, flies to Mars. Traveler, rain waters flush the sewer. Oil slicked thick trash, cigarette butt seeded city soil poured into the sea through the outfalls, divulging dirty laundry into the great washer, magnificent blue dump. Currents sink the heavies, wash the plastics, eternal fishnets, bottles, bags, bird and fish choke shreds, swirl in slow gyres, spreading their anoxic skirts round and round without a dying glance, the spectral dancer's heedless spectral dance. Traveler, in cities, you live in a luminous scape, man and woman made. A crowd of bulbs washes away night sky brilliance. And so you think the stars are yours and you are not theirs. Traveler, we are listening. A trillion cells, each one your body, tuned to the critical news, listening. Myriad bacteria, virus dominions in the moist cavern of your core, on the layered sheath of your skin, secreting signals to your mind, tuned in to your pulse, resolute, listening. Uncountable mites, homesteading multitudinous pores, loners listening from caverns, stippling your face, weathering washwater storms to quickly crawl forth in darkness to mate and retreat to shelter. Traveler, your wild life is listening. Traveler, honk if you love, creates disturbance. Heads yank around to see which way the love rolls in. Leap into its path, jump out of its way, no matter. The intersection, a pile of wrecks. When sunshine, Klieg lights, street lamps light the scene, love isn't anywhere. Center lines cleared, commotion scrapped, doors and windows wide open. This road is a welcome. Traveler, your heart's breach, an abyss where light never arrives, never leaves, no matter the brilliance of your own illumination. Who cracked open this gap so deep it meets the nether depths of the earth's own fractures? When the astrologer charted unfortunate stars, did you leave his house wrapped in permanent disappointment? Was his cloak so dark it quenched even the closest fire? Your mind so burdened you stumbled into this darkness? Could sorrow break its fever, beating hot on your brow? Then what would mourning be? Sustained by neighbors, patient at your doorstep, summoning across boundaries, the mysterious trees, the generous soil. You know where these signals arise. Your body quietly captures their intentions. Yet you move your empty pen across blank paper, listening to lonely Beethoven pulsing from the radio. He looked deep into the staff and found his body's song. Listen, that's your heart you hear. and it's singing. Traveler, what is the role of beauty in times of misfortune? Bombs crater the concrete city, broken shells on a dry beach, gouged accretions awaiting the sweeping away. A bulldozer's blade, the victor's knife. Bombs can't help themselves. Salmon spawn surged into designated nests. An overwhelming army mates with the target. Hatchlings grimace, tumble to the sea. Thus, terror returns to the stream. Some of us who pay for it watch on screens, read, listen to reports. Where is the measuring stick, the newest laser tool calculating fossiled hearts, rivers, weather, oceans, fields? Others of us grip our bloody hands. Traveler, we go on, we go on. A threadbare sky holds up the sun. Border beyond border, the dove's perfect opalescent egg in the jay's perfect beak. Blasted sand bristles diamond perfect light, broadcasting astonishment across greater and greater distance. Traveler, after the sweltering summer, after ash sifting down from the burial grounds, open the gate. Then tell me, what did the fire say? Wall, my wind-marched fortress, air ripped from every lung, rapturous, rocketing light, writhing forests, no longer trees. Heralds. Tongue, hot prods plunged down water-worn ravines, fire lips smacking, power to eat everything. Roar, terrifying trees until they split, sap fed to the fire. Ash, pooled pink coat hanger, doe's head trapped in a plastic bucket. She can't shake it loose. She stumbles. Ashes, ashes, fire collapses. What did the bird say? We did not say blue sky, your sky. We did not say gray or black, your sky. We did not say mottled clouds, your sky. We did not say flame. We did not say shame. What did the plants say? Fire bursts scorched seeds onto the prepared ground, resting, waiting for rain to root and breathe. We need you to breathe out. We need you to breathe in. You need us to breathe out. You need us to breathe in. We were breathing. But you are blue and slumped. You've sent in the flames yet again. You've taken the breathing animals with you. What did the animals say? Animals beneath a rock, animals under the planters, animal cities in your visceral caverns. What you can't see, you don't name. What you don't name, you can't see. And when you do, you stamp us possessed. But take your time, shoot yourselves to far outer space. Let the stars chew on you, celestial bovine burners. What did the horses say? Tread trammeled the pasture, heat soured the grass. The bit tasted like bullets. We fled and found refuge without riders. What did the dolphins say? Please see through the dirt to the base of your spine, your haven of fists, the hull of your mind. When you don't sing to us, salt water reaches up and up to capture your eyes, rebirth your hearts. There were seasons when you danced with us, when we shared with you our visions seen in depths where you are blind. How the earth loves. We loved you. Traveler, end of season. Rose brown figs ripen on aqua kitchen tiles. A porcelain sink, pitted and nicked. Wide enough. Traveler, walking streamside among sycamores, breathing the mold spice stuff, winter leaves snapping with your rhythmic steps, breeze through the canopy, rattling the old leaves soon to fall. Oh, sweet death and death's leaf songs. Traveler, what is reborn is the body, font of life, animal, mineral, vegetable feast, and the final gust, gifted at birth, returned to the green leaves from whence it came. No comfort to the one losing a lifetime lived in the shape of a self, name, address, height, weight, history to remember and be remembered by, joy in tasks, the sensual treasury. Today, some will say, not today, misery, stagger, gagging breath, no matter, I want it, I want it. Today demands a bigger container. You grieve for your shadow, too small to fit this new life. Traveler, decay is a slow turn off the road you were following. The road with its signs and stops and starts, signaled by lights and laws. Traveler, decay shakes loose the map, adding dimensions, hailing directions more than one at a time, and you take them all. Trailing embers, your ash settles in the sea currents. Traveler, the whole world hails your new proportions. Your mind disrobed, limitless, loosed from the mouth, from the page. Your final dreams faultless, aurora borealis, illuminating the bone shade of the skull. No hindrance, you whistle in awe. Traveler, sun breaks the day's heart. Its daily departures, glorious robes tossed into darkness, fleeing naked over the edge of the sea. Only the star canopy remains, votives lighted so long ago, summoning the dawn, awakening love's beloved body. Thank you.
Thank you, Susan. And forgive me, art obviously molds the science and the spiritual philosophy together. The art is the poetry itself. So thank you so much.
It was
Go ahead.
absolutely a pleasure to read those poems as a piece. I'm thrilled to have had that chance.
Wonderful. Okay, our next reader is Doran Robbins, and his book, this is a big book, selected poems 1975 to 2015 sympathetic manifesto. And you probably can't see that, but the figure on the front is apparently a portrait of Doran himself. So there's Doran winking at you. Now this book is a very different mood from Susan's. I think of Doran as a poet of the underbelly of things. There's some terrific political poetry in this book, really corrosive attacks on what's happening in our society. Let me give you a weird metaphor. I think of Doran's as a kind of a hungry fish coming up on his subjects, up into the light towards the surface. And he doesn't break the surface. He doesn't preach or say what should be happening. He attacks the awful things that are happening. And there are also some very fascinating poems in this book about, like there's a poem called What's Up? What's up, man? Which is essentially how to survive in a tough neighborhood, which I very much sympathize with because I grew up, I went to ghetto school, and I had to do all those tough but not angry moves. But this is really a striking book, a big, striking, multiple theme book. So let's give him a warm welcome, Doran Robbins.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. I just want to make sure you can hear me, right? Yeah, great. Okay. So thank you to Richard, and again to Joyce and to Rosalind and everyone involved with putting together the reading. And I celebrate Susan's new book, beautiful reading. And hello to Zoom, and welcome to my desk, actually, where I do everything from. Welcome to my first poem, which will be called Shotgun Creek. It comes from a trail that I used to go on when I lived in Oregon. I discovered it on the way to a job one day. I was remodeling a house and I was a carpenter out in Brownsville. And I was intrigued by the name of this creek, that it seemed like an oxymoron, Shotgun Creek. And it's really one of the more remarkable places I ever was inspired by, to do nothing else except feel the inspiration of the beauty there. The poem is a kind of a reflexive poem in the sense of recollection or ode to daydreaming. Shotgun Creek. If you could stand on the bank of Shotgun Creek in beds of maidenhair fern, the creek current roaring on shores of the fern's inward halls. If you go off, if you leave maidenhair, everything, the main thing, all or nothing, nothing much, no matter what, whether you complete the blueberry essence, multi-vegan compound vitamin, Q-patch enema, and nicotine purge, there's the price you pay. You could turn sour without limit in the one time at a time, not the only time deal I made with myself. I'm the one who said, I'll give you that. No matter what, the house with corroded switches, a fern garden, 2 ferns spread there, soaking the ground. for the soaking, for the pleasure of Euros, for the ivy root where the cricket laid her eggs, twin flowers, twin everything, knockwurst, the kosher kind, the tomato caved in with mold, the tomato that justifies its ashes, the coincidence full of renewal. I stood on the bank. This next poem, it's a very regional poem to me. It appeared in a beautifully put together book by Christine Hulbert at Lost Horse Press in my book, Amnesty Muse. And I find that I feel more comfortable with the poem in the Bill Moore, Neely Cherkovsky anthology, because it's a California poem really to me. I don't like to get into regionalism too much because the regional is always kind of a metonym for the worldwide to me in some way. However, there is the specifics, of the Hispanic and Afro-American culture, along with the Caucasian culture that I grew up in, like Richard was talking about. And I call it Tamale Place. I don't really remember the name of the Mexican restaurant we used to eat and meet at. Me and my partners used to work as carpenters. It comes up as the Toltec, which is a priest, of course, in Aztec culture in the poem, but I just call it Tamale Place. I'm waiting for my breakfast tamale in the Toltec. The St. Francis of restaurant flies blows on his plate, moving his tongue from one corner of his mouth to the other. He never lifts his hand. He watches the flies on his rice, a compassionate strain tilting his lips, both eyebrows raised. I don't know what happened to Francis or his descendants. I don't know why we never believed in the saint of tolerance. I don't know what happened to us. In line in the Toltec with immigrant masons that work for shit. A laborer wearing one stringy knee pad counted through his change. Saint Roach stood on his back legs to examine the cherry peppers nesting with hard-boiled eggs. You get used to the plastic carnations. You get used to the portrait of the Virgin smiling over crushed chili and fruit flies. You get used to the gas and lard smell coming out of the kitchen. The descendants of Quetzalcoatl make the tamales, and you can't deny it, even while the beatings go on at the border, even while the homely beluga, the whales of cancer, once known as the canaries of the sea, wash up from their toxic ocean bath on St. Lawrence Beach. You can't deny the tamale pleasure because it's a lifetime of picking up the version of the blood sacrifice you're born into and the blood sacrifice language you use to get it down. In the lucky pile of signs I talk to myself with, I work the same collective slang, a sort of pigeon St. Francis, a little pig Latin Don Quixote, the straightaway language of my blood sacrifice. In the Toltec, in line, in the morning, as if it were the Virgin of Guadalupe, I waited it out for all night. Lupe's the only one who could spice this meat. I was safe in the Toltec, another lucky part of everything else, not bombed or poisoned flat, not homeless, not starved into the ground at the end of December 2004. That's all. I walked back with flour tortillas I couldn't finish. I served out of a bag what I saved to the man who sat there in the day, every day, all day. The man grinded down to that spot. It was his corner in the day. He was the day man, his grass border, his fire hydrant, that spot, his Stelazine, Prozac, Demerol, Xanax, whatever it is he receives to finally conk out on. I could only bring what I saved from what I couldn't eat any more of. I could have just been tired of it. Who can even look at what was under his nails? Handing the food over, I smile, the goodwill smile. In line in the Toltec, I admire the Virgin, how she bends from her heart compliantly, as though moving closer from her calendar on the wall. And we need her closer, as close as she can get, but she's not coming down from anywhere. If you ask me about her gesture, I would say you're asking about a language that is irresistible, a language that often works in every way, because it's the language of the illusion of comfort, of assurance, a language out of whack with the examples of goodness, because we shouldn't need, of all things, a virgin for comfort, but a different life. The Virgin of Guadalupe caught me in the eyes of the woman working the counter. She gave me a look because I bickered with the guy beside me about who was next in line, because I had forgotten how the strands of red peppers hang their sleeves, lapping the delicious garlic strands, because their shaved heads bow over the 500 Marys of needle tracks, because the crucifixion of the meat of tamales, because the Saint Francis of jalapenos and tamales and flies, because the Jesus of cornmeal and lard. Okay, I'm gonna do a short digression away from the selected poems to read a poem. It comes out of a longer sequence, and it's some reflections on my upbringing, which means parents. And for the sake of a kind of a coherence for the section, I'll just give you the title Cake. It's really just number 2, though. It's probable, it's inexplicable. They never expressed self-doubt. I knew the expression. I knew them 59 years. The effect was incoercible. When they told you it would be there, it was right where they said it would be. Forgive me, you're worthless without dependability. You can be a stranger to the hovel in your own mind, broken sequences, end of the supply chain. They'd always eat that cheap cake. It was junk to me. Not Russian bakery, honey cake, apple cake, arugula chocolate cream, poppy seed synagogue, anything else cake. They were protective to the point they'd blame the floor for wearing out your shoes. But the cake, if you didn't eat the cake, they gave you a look like you were lost. Then another look to overlook what they expressed in the "you must be lost" look. I didn't know for 18 years the desertion that made them wild, shame to the point of resentment, plain and predominant. I'd come in, the cake would be there on the table. Sometimes we had it out, the root of arguing happening underneath whatever else was going on. It was a frustrated account, one of them deserting the other. After the return, cake became their habit. I had to have been agreed to with some forgiveness, to the expression of a plea with some begrudgement. It used to be one of those two cutting me a piece of cake, me resisting. I don't know what comes first, the lust for sugar or the bitter person. Okay, so kind of wish I was looking at the screen like Susan was, or you just kind of scroll down like scrambling through papers here like I'm at a regular reading. Back in my 20s, I did quite a bit of roaming around, and I was, as we used to say, trying to find myself. I was fortunate enough to decide to work my way to Greece and being in Greece and trying to find myself, I naturally went to a lot of ruins, archaeological sites, monuments to victims of Nazi invasion. And I met this older middle-aged man, a very generous person, a Buddhist, whose spiel to me, whining about my lost mentality, was convincing, but I was trying to find something else. The poem is called Not a Zen Man. Guess who? Roamed around drunken on Crete, maybe too long. In my chaos, I met an obsessed man from Belgium who studied Zen, a man about 50 roaming around after a little stone of cancer swallowed his wife. Drinking wine from a bottle together, outside his tent, we talked about books until I mentioned Thomas Merton. Then he leapt up, blowing cigarette ashes over my black sleeve. He started going on about Thomas Merton's book, Zen and the Birds of Appetite, addressing me abstractly, saying there is nowhere to go, that we aren't here, that nothing's here. He was raving about a mountain and about a woman, and when you are nowhere, she comes to you, because there is nothing there. And she will climb the mountain because nothing is there. And she will say, you aren't there, only a mountain. And his eyes were wildly alert with something he took away from that monk, Thomas Merton. Not from the other books we talked of, not Homer or Dostoevsky or Lawrence Durrell. His savior, he said, the one who led him to the Greek islands in the first place. I didn't know about saviors. If I had a savior, it probably was Dostoevsky, because I always mistook passion and exaggeration for character. I was a chaotic man, not a Zen man. I was a man of bitter seeds, not a Zen man. When the cart stopped, I was the one who whipped the cart, not the ox. I roamed back drunk, back through bamboo to the room of a chaotic man, with my floorboards and handrail uneven, the stairway gouged, holes throughout the moldings. I thought, never mind, this is my stitched thing. This is my pocked thing. If only I could sit on that ledge farther down within it, I thought. If only I could hold that clove of water there. Okay, so, I feel like I'm obsessed with notions of sacrifice. Sacrifices that are appreciated, not enough appreciated, and self-destruction. Not that there's a parallel between the two, but it's two separate, realities that could be in discourse with each other or separate discourse, but they meet somehow. They get commingled in some way, and we struggle with it, or some people struggle with it. And in this poem, To the Lotuses, I make a brief allusion also to a Larry Levis poem that he wrote for James Wright. It comes down to a helplessness to certain unwanted drives. To the Lotuses. I started writing this about Lenny Bruce because he was an earlier joyful influence, and because the cops and religious freaks and district attorney inquisitioners offended by his dirty truths, offending all such supposedly protected offenses, silenced him. And it was a lot of it, a monologue about the militarist, racist, mock religious control of this culture. And he didn't take it for granted. And he didn't apologize that he loved hard drugs, delirium's acid rain, and a lotus wine stock who sponged his junk tracks and abscessed legs, a lotus let herself out to the junk heap, tilt, de-seated, meth-broken side of him. I started writing this about Lenny Bruce and about James Wright and about Tarlovsky, who wrote about death wanting James Wright's mouth for a souvenir, and how each one of them made it seem like they were willing. There are attachments to bitterness that silence me. You never think you'll make it worse. You never think you'll increase entanglement. You never believe you won't see who it really is coming in wearing your shoes and sits down to write an elegy for a man who drowned because he didn't know how to read the signs soon enough or at all, maybe even willfully. Some read the signs in 3 languages and hop right into the riptide. Some guys let death jerk them off and swim them out, and a few a little too stoned and possibly cynically attached to it so they could tell of it in the first place. We don't know any better. We write that we do. When I wasn't looking and then heard him again, I wondered what haunted the dog we found and who always yelped at some point in his sleep. You had to stroke him and fondle his ears or whistle to him so he'd wake up, look right at you, and then sleep again. Found him under a truck shuddering behind a back wheel, his fur smudged bloody along the welts on his back. Never knew what happened to him before they dumped him there. And I reimagined those sons of bitches swinging their belt buckles and extension cords. Somebody else can write about beauty. Events like the Prague Renewal always come with some gang that force feeds dog shit to James Wright's precious ponies. And they were, in his language, precious, in his images, in his sweet blood, though he doesn't mention it, as he was himself maybe along that country road, returning from detoxing at Mayo Clinic. I don't really know. If he was up there, he doesn't say. He doesn't have to. He and a friend pulled over once to meet the young ponies, torched houses and wagons, beatings in the open Prague streets, skinheads gang fucking gypsy women during the renewal. After the communists went down in Prague, the devil, said Vladimir Stankiewicz, was replaced by Satan. Who are the lotuses? There are lotuses. I've known 3.5 lotuses. They were just as caught up. They weren't protected from their own ravages, but the lotuses wait for you. Those lotuses, they talk until you're sane with yourself. They fuck your brains out. You return the favor. You need them to go to hell with. You return the favor. They bring tenderness, the renewal. They bring ignition, taken for granted from mostly, and split from. So in the winters, I teach Shakespeare lovingly and appreciatively. And so King Lear is always there, but King Lear's wife is not there. And I know it's part of the plot device, you know, by dear Shakespeare, but I always wonder about why he left her out. So this is about Lear's wife. No audible voices in the dream. I saw facial operas. Do we hallucinate or fantasize speech in dreams? I was introduced to King Lear's wife. No technique perceived for sound. He pretends, he prefigures, he performs him in there. Maybe the last character personally known without ever seeing, you will see last. The know thyself you knew first. What happened to Lear's wife? You mean, why isn't King Lear's wife in King Lear? What kind of king doesn't have a queen talking back advice, also preparing daughters for despair, also encouraging the king to be more experimental in the bedroom theater? No one says a thing about Lear's wife. And did what's his name ever dip any one of his daughter's feet into the surf? Were the waves the color of shin armor or iris and sada spread beyond the two figures? Did sea froth, there's usually a dog, and their leaping dog, if there was a dog, frighten the child? Did he assure her, swinging her body with care above the water to avert snapping teeth if there was a muzzle, if they went to the sea? And what implored him to carry her down to the shore, celebrating his daughter, as you see in some photos, a wild father with a 1 or a 2 or a 3-year-old child tightly held to his chest, the other arm in a kind of glory raised to the waves? Why was the queen excised? What self-contrivance, what causes would her experiences reveal about her daughter's deaths, and up till then permanently demented husband of tantrums and rule endured up to her end? How did her consequences reflux Lear's memory, Lear's storage reel selection, memory's contraption, erratic, still further sorting, its dial turning him, lifting him past the tail of memory, past the swimming dog with wooden eyes? Probably still one of the greatest experiences in literature. I think I'll be reading it until my deathbed. Okay, I'm going to finish with 2 love poems. The first one is called The Weaving, and it's basically a celebration of the month of my wife's birth, July. July was always the month for me. I cling to July. There are no doubts about July. I feel human enough and animal enough in July. I identify with those harvests flying just above the rock walls, then bursting from themselves into the ground, into each other. I'm talking about a plain garden with apricots and lemons, where the cicadas play in the sage, but never show their watery guitars. And what is that harvest all about? Their music is a harvest, an overflowing harvest, whether those musicians and their instruments are visible or not. I'm saying I have everything in July. I'm saying that July is the birth of it, July to July, a repetition of harvest. July, the spiders born in the camellias. July, the hummingbird and the olive. That's Venus Janicos, hummingbird asleep in her lap. That's Venus Janicos, olive, the one with the breast inside of it. That is what my sister stitched into the weaving in her brother's head. And this last one here, it's called Under the May Star. She brought the 2 shells. I called them the 2 apples. She called them the anniversaries. I called them our wooden plates. When all qualities dissipate, the plural intensity. Her feet make erotic shadows. The May Star notates the ground, the metaphor of our gravity, the female version of my hand next to the other version, the convection I felt, her heat brought it to me. The May Star, the apples and plates, the tree of cocoons, the lower shadow of her dress, the stoned bees, and at night the watermelon moths, out of their minds from what they sip and rub in the bottle brush. Whatever it is open in my mind, louvered, drumming, roiling, the lower rhythm raised of the rhythm inclination, the unrelated rhythm, without the prior rhythm, the renewed of rhythm, of being planted, of the feeling of the rhythm of being planted. Thank you.
Thank you, Doran. You really humbled me. My introduction was so insufficient to the sensitivity of those poems that you read.
Thank you.
But you read them. That's what is the importance. So thanks to our two wonderful poets, Susan Suntree, Doran Robbins. Here comes Joyce to sign us off.
Thanks, Richard.
Musical chairs. Thank you so much for that wonderful reading. It was just amazing. And thanks to every single person who joined us tonight and to everyone who sees it in the future on Facebook or on YouTube. And please check the chat box. Check out these books. Look for these books on at bookshop.org/lists, LISTS/poetry-flash-readings. And they'll be mailed to your doorstep. So thank you. Thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks to everyone. Hello, friends. Hello, everybody. I wish you were here.